The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Chen Wei stepped forward, her heels clicking against the crystalline floor of the Grand Assembly. Around her, representatives from 47 species watched with expressions ranging from disgust to barely concealed fear. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, charged by the collective hostility of civilizations that had reached their breaking point with humanity. "The motion has been decided," announced Councillor Vextai, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture that somehow managed to convey both authority and dismissal. The Altarian's voice carried the weight of centuries, each word deliberate and final. "By unanimous vote of all member species, humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." Chen felt the blood drain from her face, but her diplomatic training held firm. She had expected harsh sanctions, trade restrictions, perhaps even territorial limitations. But complete expulsion? This was unprecedented in the Council's 3,000-year history. "Councillor Vextai," she began, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening in her chest. "Surely we can find a compromise. Humanity acknowledges that our expansion has been aggressive. We're willing to discuss." Discuss? The interruption came from Councillor Zephyra, whose scaled hide had shifted to angry crimson patterns. "Your species has colonized 17 disputed systems in the past decade alone. You've ignored territorial agreements, bypassed our courts, and when confronted, you simply claim manifest destiny, as if the universe owes you dominion." A chorus of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen watched as tentacles, appendages, and various alien limbs gestured in universal signs of frustration and condemnation. This wasn't just about territory anymore. This was about fear. "The Terran Federation," continued Vextai, "has demonstrated repeatedly that it cannot be trusted to honor galactic law. Your military buildup alone violates 7 separate treaties. The way your species breeds and spreads across space like a virus." "We are not a virus," Chen interrupted, her diplomatic mask finally cracking. "We are explorers, pioneers, builders of civilization. You are conquerors," hissed Councillor Yithmar, her serpentine form coiling with agitation. "Every world you touch becomes a military outpost. Every system you enter becomes a staging ground for further expansion. The Proxima incident alone should have taught you. The Proxima incident was self-defense." Chen's voice echoed off the chamber walls. "Your blockade threatened civilian colonies. We acted to protect our people. You destroyed an entire Zenthani fleet." Vextai replied coldly. 30,000 souls, simply because they dared to enforce established boundaries." The chamber erupted in angry chittering, roaring, and sounds Chen couldn't even classify. She stood at the center of it all, feeling the weight of 4 centuries of human expansion pressing down on her shoulders. Everything they had built, all the connections and alliances her predecessors had painstakingly forged, crumbling in real time. "The decision is final," Vextai announced as the noise subsided. "All human diplomatic missions are hereby terminated. All trade agreements are void. All territorial concessions are revoked. Humanity will return to its home system and remain there. Any human vessel found beyond the soul barrier will be considered an act of aggression and dealt with accordingly." Chen's hands trembled as the implications hit her. Complete isolation. Economic strangulation. They were essentially being sentenced to death by slow suffocation. "You're condemning 60 billion people to stagnation," she said quietly. "Our economy depends on interstellar trade. Our colonies need supplies, technology, medical resources. You're not just exiling us, you're signing our death warrant." For the first time, she saw something that might have been regret flicker across Vextai's features. But it passed quickly. "Your species should have considered these consequences before choosing the path of endless war and expansion," he replied. "Perhaps isolation will teach humanity the value of peaceful coexistence." Chen looked around the chamber one final time, memorizing the faces of those who had condemned her species. She saw fear in their eyes, yes, but also something else. Relief. They genuinely believed they were solving a problem by removing humanity from the equation. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. "Very well," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Humanity accepts your judgment. We will return to our home system as ordered." She turned to leave, but paused at the chamber's threshold. "I hope," she added, her voice carrying clearly across the sudden quiet, "that when we meet again, you remember that this was your choice, not ours." The door sealed behind her with a sound like thunder. 6 months after the expulsion, Admiral Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching the blue-green marble of Earth grow larger in the view screen. Around her, a fleet of 200 vessels held formation, their hulls scarred from the long journey home. These weren't just any ships. They were everything humanity had in space when the barriers went up, transformed in the crucible of necessity into something entirely new. Admiral, called Commander Rodriguez from the communication station, we're receiving priority transmission from Fleet Command. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you immediately. Martinez nodded grimly. She had been dreading this conversation for weeks, but there was no avoiding it now. The holographic form of Admiral Harrison materialized before her, and she could see the exhaustion etched deep into his weathered features. "Sarah," Harrison began without preamble, "I need your fleet designation and cargo manifest. The Resource Council is trying to account for everything we managed to salvage before the lockdown." "Negative on both counts, David," Martinez replied, watching her old friend's expression harden. "My ships aren't reporting to the Resource Council anymore." "Excuse me?" Martinez moved to the tactical display, highlighting the region of space they have been operating in during the Exile. "For 6 months, we've been making contact with species the Council never bothered to catalog, races they considered primitive or relevant. Turns out there are a lot more civilizations out here than anyone realized." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Sarah, this is not the time for exploration games. Earth needs every resource, every ship, Earth needs to stop thinking small," Martinez interrupted. "Do you know what we found out there, David? We found entire sectors that have been ignored by the Council for centuries. Species with incredible technologies, resources beyond imagination, all dismissed because they don't fit the Council's narrow definition of advanced civilization." She gestured to her tactical officer, who brought up a star map showing their recent discoveries. Dozens of systems glowed with new designations, trade routes, and alliance markers. The Kalins, for example. The Council wrote them off as technological primitives because they use biological engineering instead of metal and circuits. Their living ships can heal themselves, adapt to any environment, and reproduce naturally. The Council sees this as backward. I see it as revolutionary. Harrison leaned forward in his chair. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm not proposing anything," Martinez replied. "I'm reporting what's already happening. While Earth has been focused on survival and resource management, my fleet has been building something bigger. We've established trade agreements with 17 species, mutual defense pacts with 9 others, and 3 civilizations have formally requested human protection from Council expansion." The implications hit Harrison like a physical blow. "Sarah, you're talking about..." "I'm talking about an empire," she said flatly. "Not the old human empire that the Council feared, based on conquest and subjugation. Something new, something built on mutual benefit and shared defense against Council tyranny." Behind her, Lieutenant Commander Park looked up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving responses from the Meridian, Vanguard, and Sovereign fleets. They're all reporting similar developments in their sectors." Harrison's face went pale. "How many fleets are involved in this?" "All of them," Martinez answered. "David, you need to understand something. The Council didn't just exile humanity. They exiled every human ship, every space-based installation, every orbital habitat. They cut us off from Earth just as completely as they cut Earth off from the galaxy. So we did what humans do. We adapted." She moved closer to the holographic display, her voice dropping to an intense whisper. "For 6 months, we've been surviving out here on our own. No supply lines from Earth, no reinforcements, no backup. We had to make allies, establish trade, and yes, sometimes fight for our lives. And you know what we discovered?" Harrison waited, clearly afraid of the answer. "We discovered that we don't need the Council's permission to exist. We don't need their trade routes, their technology, or their approval. Out here, beyond their influence, humanity isn't just surviving, we're thriving." The bridge fell silent as her words sank in. Through the view screen, Earth continued to grow larger, but somehow it seemed smaller than it had 6 months ago. Smaller and more limiting. The question, Martinez continued, is whether Earth wants to be part of what we're building, or if it wants to remain trapped in a single system, slowly strangling on its own limitations. Harrison stared at her for a long moment. The Council will see this as an act of war. Martinez smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. David, the Council already considers our existence an act of war. The only difference is that now we have the power to fight back. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Holographic displays filled the chamber with urgent reports from across Council space, each one more alarming than the last. Counselor Vextai called for order repeatedly, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the pressure of unprecedented developments. Order, order. His voice finally cut through the cacophony. We will address these reports systematically. Counselor Yithmar, please present the Meridian Sector situation. The serpentine counselor scales had shifted to deep purple patterns of distress. 15 star systems in the Meridian Sector have formally withdrawn from Council authority. They cite human protection as justification. Our enforcement fleets report that human vessels are actively patrolling these systems, and any Council ship attempting to restore order is met with overwhelming force. Angry hissing filled the chamber. Counselor Zephyra's hide flashed violent red. This is exactly what we feared would happen. We should have acted more decisively when we had the chance. What could have been more decisive than complete exile? Demanded Counselor Thrix, his crystalline form resonating with frustrated harmonics. We removed them from the galaxy entirely. Clearly, Vextai said grimly, we underestimated their capacity for independent action. Intelligence reports suggest that human fleets have been operating beyond Council space for months, establishing what can only be described as a parallel government structure. A new voice cut through the discussion. It's worse than a parallel government. All eyes turned to Counselor HFY, whose species rarely spoke in Council sessions. My scouts report that the humans have established what they call the Free Systems Alliance. It's a military and economic confederation designed specifically to oppose Council authority. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Vextai found his voice. How many systems? Current estimates suggest approximately 200 star systems have joined this alliance, with more added weekly. The human fleets serve as both military backbone and coordination mechanism, but the real power lies in the economic integration they've created. Counselor Yithmar coiled tighter. Economic integration? They've created a trade network that bypasses all Council routes. Resource-sharing agreements, technology exchanges, even cultural programs. Species that we monitor for centuries are suddenly advancing at unprecedented rates because of human involvement. Zephyra's scales flashed in nearly black. They're arming our former subjects. Not just arming, Kethvai continued. Teaching, training, sharing technologies that we've kept restricted for good reason. The humans seem to have no concept of technological containment protocols. Vextai accesses private data files, pulling up intelligence reports that made his blood run cold. According to our deep space reconnaissance, human shipyards are now operational in 17 different systems. They're not just maintaining their Exile fleet, they're expanding it. Impossible, Thrix resonated. They lack the industrial base for large-scale ship construction outside their home system. They've solved that problem, Vextai replied grimly, by integrating their technology with that of their new allies. Kalan biological engineering, combined with human metallurgy. Zenthri energy systems powered by human fusion reactors. They're creating hybrid technologies that our databases can't even classify. The implications crashed over the assembly like a wave. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained peace through careful technological control. They determined which species gained access to which advances, ensuring that no single civilization could threaten the established order. Humanity had just shattered that entire system. We need to act immediately, Zephyra declared. Deploy the full enforcement fleets. Crush this rebellion before it spreads further. With what justification? Asked Council Morvain, speaking for the first time. We exile them. By our own laws, they have no obligations to Council authority. Technically, they're not even breaking any treaties, since we voided all agreements with them. Yithmar hissed in frustration. Are you suggesting we simply allow this to continue? Let them build their empire unchallenged? I'm suggesting, Morvain replied carefully, that we may have created a situation where any aggressive action on our part will be seen as unprovoked warfare against independent systems. Vextai slumped in his chair, the weight of realization settling on his shoulders. We exiled them to protect the galaxy from human expansion. Instead, we've given them justification for unlimited expansion. Every species they protect, every system they defend, becomes part of their sphere of influence. There's something else, HFY added reluctantly. Intelligence suggests that the humans are actively seeking contact with other species that have grievances against the Council. The Draconi Remnant, the Void Dwellers, even some of the machine intelligences from the Outer Rim. They're building more than just a trade network. They're creating a coalition of everyone who's ever felt oppressed by Council authority. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the full scope of the crisis became clear. They hadn't just exiled humanity. They had created the foundation for a galactic civil war. Recommendations? Vextai asked quietly. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, Counselor Thrix resonated with grim harmonics. We prepare for war, because ready or not, I believe it's coming to us. President Elena Vasquez stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's major nations, her expression grave as she delivered the news that would change everything. The Emergency Global Assembly had been called with minimal warning, but every seat in the vast auditorium was filled. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed real-time data from across human space. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 6 hours ago, the Galactic Council launched what they're calling Operation Restoration, a coordinated attack on 47 systems within the Free Systems Alliance. The war we've been preparing for has begun. The murmur that rippled through the assembly died quickly as the tactical display updated with new information. Red indicators showed Council fleets engaging human and allied forces across a front that spanned half the galaxy. Admiral Harrison will provide the military briefing. Vasquez continued, stepping aside as Earth's highest-ranking officer took the podium. Harrison looked older than his 60 years. The stress of the past months etched deeply into his features, but his voice remained steady and confident. The Council's opening move was predictable but massive in scope. They deployed approximately 3,000 vessels in simultaneous strikes, targeting what they believed were our primary military installations. He gestured to the display, highlighting several battle zones. However, our distributed fleet architecture and early warning networks provided by our allies meant that very few of these strikes achieved their objectives. In most cases, Council forces found empty space where they expected to find critical targets. A hand raised from the assembly. What are our casualties? Remarkably light, considering the scale of their assault. Fewer than 200 ships lost, with most crews successfully evacuated. However, the same cannot be said for Council forces. Harrison's expression hardened. They appear to have severely underestimated both our capabilities and those of our allies. New data flowed across the display, showing engagement outcomes that seemed almost impossible to believe. The Kalen Bio ships have proven particularly effective against Council energy weapons. Their adaptive hulls can absorb and redirect most standard attack patterns. Combined with our targeting systems and tactical coordination, they're achieving kill ratios of nearly 8-to-1. President Vasquez stepped forward again. The point is not to celebrate these early victories, but to understand what they mean for Earth's future. The Council has made it clear that they intend to destroy not just our fleets, but every human settlement beyond our home system. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle on the assembly. Which brings us to the decision we must make today. Do we remain isolated in our single system, hoping that our fleets can protect us indefinitely? Or do we fully commit to the path that our exile fleets have already chosen? The President of the European Federation raised her hand. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that Earth officially recognize and join the Free Systems Alliance as a founding member. that we commit our full industrial capacity, our entire military, and our complete political authority to building something the galaxy has never seen before. The Japanese Prime Minister leaned forward. You're talking about abandoning Earth's neutrality. Once we take that step, there's no going back. There already is no going back, Harrison interjected. The Council's attack on our settlements makes that clear. They see any human presence beyond Sol as an existential threat. Our choice isn't between war and peace. It's between fighting alone or fighting with allies. On the display behind them, new reports continue to flow in. The scope of the conflict was expanding by the hour, with more systems declaring independence from Council authority and requesting alliance protection. There's another factor to consider. Vasquez continued. Our fleets report that dozens of Council member species are expressing doubts about this war. Many of them joined the Council centuries ago for protection and trade benefits, not to participate in aggressive expansion campaigns. Some are actively providing intelligence to alliance forces. The Russian premier stood. Are you saying the Council itself might fracture? I'm saying, Vasquez replied, that 3,000 years of imposed peace and technological stagnation have created more resentment than loyalty. The humans didn't create that resentment. We just provided an alternative. She moved closer to the assembly, her voice dropping to an intense whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. For the first time in galactic history, there's a power block that welcomes technological advancement, encourages species independence, and offers protection without demanding submission. The Council has never faced anything like this before. The display updated again, showing Alliance forces achieving another decisive victory in the Outer Veil sector. But more importantly, it showed 3 more Council species formally declaring neutrality and opening diplomatic channels with Alliance representatives. The vote is simple, Vasquez announced. Do we commit Earth's full resources to the Alliance, accepting the risks and responsibilities that come with galactic leadership? Or do we maintain our isolation and hope that our fleets can hold the line indefinitely? The Prime Minister of India raised her hand. If we vote yes, what happens to Earth? Vasquez smiled for the first time that day. Earth becomes the capital of the largest free confederation of species in galactic history. We become the center of a trade network spanning thousands of systems. We become home to the military command that's reshaping the balance of power across the galaxy. She paused, looking out across the assembly. We become exactly what the Council feared we might become. Not through conquest, but through liberation. The vote was unanimous. 1 year after the vote that transformed Earth into the capital of the Free Systems Alliance, Admiral Martinez stood on the observation deck of a newly constructed orbital command center, watching as the largest fleet in human history prepared for departure. Below her, Earth gleamed like a jewel, its surface now dotted with the lights of countless new installations and the orbital rings of expanded shipyards. Final fleet count, Admiral, reported Captain Chen, no relation to the former ambassador, but carrying the same determined spirit. 4,732 vessels, representing 43 species. It's the largest military force ever assembled in this galaxy. Martinez nodded, her eyes fixed on the massive dreadnoughts at the fleet center. These weren't the crude warships humanity had fielded a year ago. These were hybrid masterpieces, combining the best technologies from every Alliance member. Kalan bioadaptive hulls, Zenthri energy cores, Draconi weapon systems, and human tactical coordination networks. Each ship represented not just military power, but the proof that cooperation could achieve what no single species could accomplish alone. Status report from the Advanced Reconnaissance Fleets. All Council strongholds have been identified and mapped. Intelligence suggests they've managed to assemble approximately 6,000 vessels for what they're calling the final solution. They're planning to concentrate everything in one massive strike against Earth itself. Martinez allowed herself a grim smile. Let them come. But I don't think we'll be waiting here when they arrive. The door to the observation deck hissed open, admitting President Vasquez and a small entourage of Alliance leaders. The diversity was striking. Scaled, furred, crystalline, and gaseous beings standing together in common purpose. What had begun as humanity's desperate exile had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral, Vasquez said, The Alliance Council has approved Operation Starfall. You are authorized to proceed with the liberation of the core worlds. Liberation, repeated Councilor of Exile, now representing the growing number of former Council species that had joined the Alliance. A year ago, I would have called this conquest. Now I understand the difference. Martinez turned from the view screen to face the assembled leaders. The difference is choice. Every system we approach will be offered membership in the Alliance, not subjugation of Earth. They can choose their own government, maintain their own culture, and chart their own destiny. All we ask is that they respect the same freedom for others. And if they refuse, asked Chancellor Thrix, whose people had been among the first Council species to defect, then we leave them alone. Martinez replied simply, the Alliance doesn't need to control every system to succeed. We just need to demonstrate that there's an alternative to Council's model of enforced stability and technological stagnation. Through the observation deck's massive windows, she watched as the fleet began its final preparations. Cargo vessels loaded with medical supplies, educational materials, and infrastructure development packages moved between the warships. This wasn't just an invasion force. It was a civilization-building enterprise. Admiral, called her communications officer, were receiving priority transmission from deep space reconnaissance. The Council fleet is moving ahead of schedule. They'll reach Earth in 72 hours. Perfect timing, Martinez thought. Signal all commands. Operation Starfall commences immediately, and broadcast this message on all Council frequencies. She moved to the communication station, knowing that her next words would be heard across the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Martinez, Supreme Commander of the Alliance Fleet, broadcasting to all worlds within the former Council sphere. For 3,000 years, you have lived under a system that limited your growth, restricted your technology, and demanded your submission in exchange for protection from threats that rarely materialized. She paused, gathering her thoughts as she prepared to make history. That system dies today, not through conquest, but through liberation. Every world in Council space is hereby offered membership in the Free Systems Alliance, with full rights to self-determination, technological advancement, and species sovereignty. You will not be forced to join us, but you will no longer be forced to remain under Council authority. The fleet began moving, thousands of ships accelerating toward jump points that would take them directly to the heart of Council space. Martinez continued her broadcast, her voice carrying across the galaxy with a promise that would reshape civilization itself. To those who choose freedom, we offer our friendship, our protection, and our commitment to a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential. To those who choose tyranny, we offer this warning. The age of enforced stagnation is over. The future belongs to those brave enough to seize it. As Earth fell away behind them, Martinez felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Humanity had been exiled from the galaxy as punishment for their aggressive expansion. Instead, they had become the catalyst for the greatest liberation movement in galactic history. The Council had been right to fear human ambition. They had just been wrong about everything else. Behind them, Earth's orbital defenses powered up, ready to welcome the Council's final solution with a reception they would never forget. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited to choose between the chains of the past and the promise of an unlimited future. The war that would end the Council's 3,000-year reign had begun, and humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for the right of every species to dream of something better than what they had been given. And across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to dream were beginning to remember.